if they want to go over.
Thank you. Thank you.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, make it.
Maybe I'll sleep low enough where I'm wearing flats. Yes.
Good morning
Good morning.
and welcome. I'm Donald Whitehead. I am the Executive Director of the National Coalition for the Homeless, and we want to thank you all for being here. I am honored to be here today to speak to an issue that we all must really take a stand on. We must really come together so that we don't lose this incredible opportunity that we have to start the process of ending homelessness. America is one of the wealthiest nations in the world's history. So there is no reason why we cannot provide affordable, decent, high-quality housing to all Americans who want it, and all Americans who need it, and all Americans who deserve it. A fundamental and human right. Most Americans believe that all Americans deserve affordable housing and jobs at a livable wage. If we have true fairness, equity, and justice in America, that would be a reality. We encourage you to join the Bring America Home Now campaign, spearheaded by the National Coalition for the Homeless, the National Organization for Women, the Justice Action Mobilization Network, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, among others. We must end homelessness, and we must end it now. For 4 decades, we have waited for a comprehensive solution to homelessness. The responses have been myopic approaches that pitted one population against the other. Our new administration has raised the bar on resources to address homelessness. We thank the administration for its commitment, and we thank the administration for the levels for programs that the homeless movement has not seen in decades. The administration has shown a genuine effort to fund programs that can truly make a difference. In the Build Back Better program, there are resources that can truly start us on the road to what we all believe is what should happen in America today. However, we know that ending homelessness is not a priority for many elected officials. We must make it a priority. We must demand that homelessness and housing dollars remain intact in this plan. We must demand that funds allocated to prevent evictions make it into the hands of those that need the funding. In this unprecedented pandemic, we must demand a restoration of the necessities needed. Happiness, the promise that we were given on July 4th, 1776 in the Declaration of Independence. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness were declared unalienable rights. America is not living up to that promise. The mayors and governors who choose criminalization over social services are not fulfilling the promises of life and liberty. It is impossible to pursue happiness under a bridge in the downtown streets of LA or San Francisco. Happiness is hard to achieve from the backseat of a Buick in Kissimmee, Florida, or freezing cold camp in Cincinnati, Ohio. The pursuit of happiness is more than elusive if you're a teen couch surfing in Washington, D.C., because your parents will not accept you for who you are. There is no happiness when a woman's dreams are deferred by domestic violence in Des Moines. We are committed to returning hope and happiness to the millions of Americans that are experiencing homelessness today. Homelessness is not a moral failure. It is not a failure by those that find themselves homeless. The immorality is in the halls of Congress and in the state houses and at City Hall. Yeah. It's immoral to give tax breaks to the rich and head fakes to the poor. It's immoral that our leaders choose eviction over empowerment. It is immoral that in the richest country in the history of the world, that many in our government are bankrupt on compassion, in the compassion account. Today we will hear from an amazing group of advocates and members of Congress, along with affected individuals. Please listen and share so that we can begin to bring America home. I thank you so much. And now our co-event convener of the National Organization of Women, I want to introduce Christian Nunes, who will be sharing the duties of facilitating today. Christian, please take the mic.
Go, Donald!
Yes, thank you so much, Donald, for opening up today's conference and rally. Thank you, National Coalition for the Homeless, and all the other partners for coming out today to really talk about the urgency of homelessness and housing needs for us. I think this is such a great partnership that we're doing today, because what we're talking about, and Donald so laid it out so clearly, that there is an urgency that's taking place. There is an urgency that is, and the responsibility lays in the halls of Congress. It is not the urgency of the individuals who are affected by housing insecurity. It is not the urgency of those who have been placed out on the streets due to domestic violence or intimate partner violence or sexual violence, or children, or those who have been kicked out because they have not been accepted by their families. It is not their urgency to why they have to then go out and be told that they are the cause. The cause is in the fact that our Congress has failed about the most important part of infrastructure are the humans. Okay? And this is what we're dealing with today. So we have forgotten that humans are the sustainable vitality, the most important part of infrastructure in this community. So when we're talking about build back better, how do we build back better our economy? Don't forget the people. How do we do that?
That's right.
We cannot build back better without the people. The people who voted you in, the people that you owe the right and you make promises to, those are the people that you must make sure that you protect, that you provide stability for, and that you provide housing for. And you cannot have stability, you cannot have safety without housing. So when we're talking today, we want to thank Congress, we want to thank the Biden administration for what they've done so far of setting the groundwork for the Build Back Better Act, because it is essential. And it is something that in a long time we have not seen happen. So we're very thankful for that. What we also want to do is go and apply pressure. Because when we apply pressure, we remind them of what they have committed to. And we remind them that we are not negotiable. People are not negotiable.
Amen.
Okay? And what we have to do is apply pressure and say that Congress, thank you. Thank you for passing the Build Back Better Act. Senators, Republican senators, Democrat senators, independent senators, we have to work at bipartisan effort to make sure this is passed. We cannot negotiate out homelessness. And we cannot negotiate out housing, okay? Housing infrastructure is an important part. So as we look through, now is involved because we're talking about distinction. We know what happened, right? We look back and we see over the last year, over 12 million women were affected and lost jobs in 2020, okay? And women have been essential workers involved in most of these jobs, retail, housing, care. And if we don't return those jobs, they have nothing else but to be forced onto the street. So as we continue to move forward, we have to look at why families are deeply affected and how we have to work together to make sure that we are providing for them. Because we know the most that are most impacted are persons of color, marginalized communities, disabled, okay, and children. According to the ATL study, Black women face addictions twice at the rate of white people in at least 17 states. And Black women are on rent behind twice as many as white men and white women. Women who are evicted face and experience more depression, anxiety, and high blood pressure than people in stable housing. So this is not just a housing issue, this is a health issue. This is a mental health issue. This is a holistic health issue that we're talking about. So as we go forth, we have to think about what do we do and how do we continue to put pressure? How do we continue to make sure that we are providing safety? Nobody should have to worry about being beat or being homeless. Nobody should have to worry about living in a place that is unsafe. Nobody should have to worry about choosing to pay a bill or choosing to be homeless. These are things that nobody should have to be worried about. Nobody should be left behind. This Bring America Home campaign is talking about just that. It's talking about that everyone deserves a place to be home. And it is up to our government, our Congress, to make sure that they enforce some policies that are going to do just that. We must continue to put pressure. Can I hear pressure?
Pressure!
I don't believe you. Can I hear pressure?
Pressure!
Okay, so we will continue to put pressure. We will continue to make demands until we bring every American home to a safe, affordable, and stable place. Thank you.
Woo!
I'm going to bring back Joel Siegel, who is director of the Bring America Home campaign, who will tell you more about the importance of housing stability and why we're here today. Thank you very much.
Joel Siegel, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Can we give it up? National Organization for Women.
Woo!
Christian Nunes and Donald Whitehead.
Yeah.
Executive Director of National Coalition for the Homeless. Can you hear me okay? Before I start, I want to thank Michelle Levine. Where are you, Michelle Levine? There you go. She is with the Street Sense. Is that correct? All right. The magazine, which reaches thousands and thousands of people, not only here, but around the world. It's not quality, it's not quantity when you do a press conference. It's quality. And you, ma'am, represent the people that we're trying to reach, so we can give them some hope. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about our campaign, Bring America Home campaign, and then why are we here today. The Bring America Home campaign, we tried to do Donald Whitehead in about mid-2000, and we were trying to end homelessness back then, and you know what? Hasn't changed, has it? When I was 30 years old, I was living in Adams Morgan, the international director for the Chinese democracy movement. I had major surgery for sleep apnea, and I was evicted. And I came home to my apartment, and my furniture was in the streets. And for 4 years, my life was so difficult. I was homeless. Someone who grew up in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina, went to law school at UNC Chapel Hill. If I can become homeless, anybody can become homeless.
Come on now.
Anybody can become homeless. After my third surgery in Atlanta, Georgia, I became homeless again. Anybody can become homeless. In 2013, after 13 years of working for the late, great Congressman John Conyers, I became 100% disabled. And my doctor said I was not going to live from sleep apnea. And I realized I had no income, and I became homeless again.
Come on now.
And if it wasn't for my sister and my family, I don't know what would have happened to me. But what about the millions of people who don't have a family who could take them in? What about the millions of people who are living in shelters? They have no business being in shelters. I ran shelters for many years. Donald Whitehead ran shelters for many years. Thank God for them, but you don't put human beings in shelters. You put human beings in homes and apartments. Church bells just rang.
That's right.
Means I must be doing something right.
Oh, yeah.
I go to an African American church in Charlotte. I shouldn't go to church and see a family sleeping in the church, a mother, 2 kids and a husband, because the father couldn't pay a speeding traffic ticket bill. Homeless for years. Colette Sharp and her daughter, Precious, homeless for 7 years. She has Crohn's disease. Can I ask everybody here today, is that right?
No.
Is it fair?
No.
So we have to end homelessness. Now, what we're going to do with this campaign, Donald Whitehead, who I think is one of the most extraordinary organizers and leaders of this nation, and Christian Nunes, we're going to try to get 7,000 organizations organized. 7,000, maybe more. Right, Donald? Maybe more?
Yes.
And then we're going to come together as one extended family because, remember the song, We Are Family?
We are family.
We are family. We are extended family, children of God. And God does not want his or her children homeless. Even birds have nests. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
We're going to write legislation, federal legislation, and we're going to get it passed. And when the legislation gets passed, there will be billions and billions of dollars going to cities and towns across this country to build affordable housing, to renovate affordable housing, because we're about 7 million units short. Ronald Reagan cut the housing budget by $80 billion from 1981 to 85. Homelessness was not something that just happened. It was due to the stroke of the pen from this president, an ill-advised policy. Now we must restore that cut. With that, all that being said, when I was in my early 40s, I got thrown out of the George Washington University Hospital with an IV in my arm after knee surgery because I was uninsured. After they threw me out of the hospital with a knee infection, I realized that I could not spend another second being uninsured. So I quit my job at the foster care system here, organized the movement for universal health care with some of the greatest leaders ever, got hired by John Conyers. No one said we would ever pass the Affordable Care Act. No one said we could ever do anything with Medicare for all. What did we do? We passed the bill. We are going to replicate a very similar strategy. Progressive legislation. Do what Martin Luther King taught us. Build power in the streets and the suites in a movement that we have never seen before except the 1960s. We need universal health care for everybody. Everybody should have a job as a human right. The private sector can't do it alone. Is that correct? At a livable wage.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I hate the word minimum wage. How about the word maximum wage? Because when you say minimum wage, you're saying that a person has minimum worth. You can't live off minimum wage. There are women and children staying in hotels who go from the horrible tent cities, working 60 hours a week at fast food and still cannot find a place to live. That is wrong. We're going to change this. We're going to bring America home now. In conclusion, the Supreme Court is where? Right there. Oh, that's what I thought. Keep abortion legal. Keep abortion legal. May the Department of Justice do the right thing. They're suing the state of Texas. Please, let's keep abortion legal. Congress, do not cut $300 billion from the housing part of the infrastructure bill. We must stop the imminent 11 million evictions, at least 2 to 3 million. We will not let that happen. We're going to organize, organize, and organize. God bless. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel, for just amazing energy. Thank you for the courage to share your personal story. We really appreciate it. Joel will be an amazing leader for this campaign. I've known Joel for a long time, and he has been just a crusader on Capitol Hill, and I'm glad that he's back in the fight for us. We need some people on the Hill or near the Hill that do the right thing for people. Our next speaker is the Vice President of the National Coalition for the Homeless. She's also a professor at Stetson University. She's an amazing advocate for children. She comes from Florida. She does a lot of really good work. She has a poverty conference every year. She is a poet. She is a musician. She is a teacher and an amazing advocate. Our next speaker is Dr. Rajni Shankar-Brown.
Go, Rajni.
Namaste.
Namaste.
We are gathered today for reasons that we should not have to gather.
Mm-hmm.
Let us remember that when we talk about housing justice, we are talking about fundamental human rights.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about women's rights, we are talking about human rights. To think that we live in the wealthiest nation in the world, And we have millions of children who do not know where they're going to get their next meal, who are sleeping on streets, sleeping in tents made of duct tape and tarp, sleeping with fear, with increased mental health issues, with lack of resources. It is shameful.
Yes, it is.
It is painful. And it is a narrative that all of us must work to change. Change, as Dr. King would tell us, does not inevitably happen. It happens because of dedication and passion and tireless collective energy. This is energy.
Yeah.
We are the people. We have to be the ones to bend the arc toward justice. We have to be courageous and loving enough to care about our fellow human beings. Every human deserves a safe place to live.
Yes.
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was passed and adopted in 1948. Here we are in 2021 with some of the highest numbers we have ever seen before when it comes to homelessness, with disproportionate numbers of women and children.
That's right. Oh my God. Go ahead, Roger. Go ahead, Roger. It's okay. Oh, yeah.
Without basic fundamental rights. When we talk about basic physiological rights that everybody needs, shelter, air, access to clean water, to think that we live in the United States of America and our children are suffering, our children are dying, it is not okay. It is not acceptable. And we must demand change.
Amen. Yeah.
We are thankful to the Biden administration, to all of those who are helping to bend the arc, but more is needed. We have to make sure that we prioritize housing justice. We have to make sure that we actively and genuinely invest in our children and youth. If we do not invest in our children, we do not stand for much. We do not stand for liberty and justice for all.
That's right. That's right.
The paradox, the painful irony that we make children in our schools across the landscape of the U.S. take a pledge looking at our flag in the morning, but we do not grant fundamental human rights is heartbreaking. It is up to us to collectively be the change. We know that right now we have millions facing risk of eviction. Large percentages of women and children and youth. Disproportionate numbers of people of color. This is about racial equity. This is about public health. This is about civil and human rights. It is also about love. Radical love.
It is.
Radical empathy. How can we forget to care for our most vulnerable? How can we turn our eyes, close our hearts when people are dying? It is not okay. To think that across the landscape of the U.S. in rural communities, urban communities, suburban communities, we have children and youth without food, without access to showers, without a safe place to sleep,
Shame.
and so many without an advocate.
Shame.
It is not okay.
It is not okay.
It is criminal.
It is criminal.
It is not moral.
It is not moral.
And we are better than this. We know what we have to do. We have the resources to historically change the tide and narrative. As we collectively gather today, the Capitol behind us, the sun shining above us, let us all rise together, remembering our shared humanity, remembering that our children and youth deserve a better world. A world that is healthy, that is just, that is kind, that is loving, a world that is truly inclusive. Every human life deserves to have fundamental human rights. And it is up to us to roll up our sleeves, open our hearts, and do the work. There is much work to be done, but as Congressman John Lewis would remind us, as poet and civil rights activist Maya Angelou would remind us, hope is never far away. But hope also requires mindful action.
Mhm.
And action starts with we, the people. Housing, justice, now! Bring America home, now! Collectively, together, we rise. Onward and upward together. Namaste.
Wow, now Rajni just took it there for us. Thank you so much, Rajni, for those emotional, passionate, compassionate words. And she just told us what it's really all about. And it is about the people. It's about love. It's about compassion. It's about doing the right thing. So we're going to continue on with our program. Next, it's my pleasure and honor to introduce a champion that we've had for the Build Back Better Act, a Congress member who is actually doing the right thing, right? Who's making an effort to speak out and move us forward. I want to introduce Representative Stephen Harsford, who's 4th District of Nevada and resides in North Las Vegas. He has been a proven champion for working families, and he is the first vice president of the Congressional Black Caucus. Representative Harsford has been also passionate about moving forward comprehensive immigration reform, the child tax credit. He's been instrumental in that as well. So some of these things that we have seen that have been really important for making sure we're representing children and families and human infrastructure, we have seen Representative Stephen Horsford do. So it's my pleasure and my honor to bring forward Representative Stephen Horsford. Thank you for your time and being part of our rally today.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much. I'm Stephen Horsford. I'm proud to represent Nevada's 4th Congressional District. It covers 52,000 square miles from Las Vegas and North Las Vegas and central rural Nevada. I have 6 rural counties where I just did a rural swing through to meet with our constituents and to hear their concerns. And I want to thank Kelvin Lassiter, Donald Whitehead, Christian Nunes, and the staff of the National Coalition for the Homeless, and now for organizing this rally to push for the housing justice that Americans deserve. This is a personal issue that affects people all across our nation. Before I came to Congress, before I was ever elected to office, I was raised by a single mom who overcame drug addiction. I lost my father to gun violence when I was 19 years old. And while today I'm married, raising my 3 kids, nearly 4 decades ago, I experienced the trauma of being evicted based on situations that my family was dealing with at that time. But it still feels like yesterday. So no matter how many years that pass, the stress and trauma of being kicked out of your home with nowhere to go remains with you. And I believe that in America, we should not allow any child to be homeless. We are the wealthiest nation on earth, where billionaires compete to spend their money and to go to space. We should be able to provide the unhoused with housing right here in America. So in April of 2020, my district and the people in Las Vegas experienced the highest rate of unemployment that topped 30%. These are housekeepers, they are food service workers, they are cooks, they are people who are the backbone of the hospitality industry. And before this pandemic, they were living the American dream, where they could, with a good union job, afford housing. They could afford health care. They could afford food and the other necessities. But sadly, they are now facing the reality of food insecurity, housing insecurity, and health insecurity. And we can't allow that to happen. That's why I am a strong supporter of the Build Back Better Act, because it invests in the American people. And that's what Democrats do when we're in the majority. We invest in the American people. When Republicans had the White House, the majority in the Senate, and the majority in the House, what did they do? They cut taxes for the very wealthy, for big corporations, and the ultra wealthy. 83% of the benefits went to the top 1%.
Shame.
Well, now Democrats are in the majority. We have the White House, we have the House, and we have 50 votes in the Senate. And with Kamala Harris as the tiebreaker, we can get things done. Now, the Build Back Better Act includes $80 billion for public housing repair and renovation, to preserve affordable housing and to make sure that every affordable housing unit is a safe place for a family to live. These are investments that create good jobs and help make public housing better for families to live in. It includes $37 billion for the National Housing Trust Fund to help build new units that will be within reach for people with extremely low income or who are on a housing voucher. And for my colleagues who want to cut housing programs out of the Build Back Better Act, I would ask you this: which of these programs are you willing to cut? How many children are you willing to let go homeless? Today, as we recover from a crisis that has taken more than 700,000 of our fellow Americans, we have the opportunity to reshape our economy to be more fair, to be more equitable, and to be more just. And that's why I'm proud to stand with the National Coalition for the Homeless, Chairwoman Maxine Waters, and all of the advocates who are working to oppose efforts to strip housing funding out of the Build Back Better Act. This is a once in a generation opportunity to invest in the American people by expanding the child tax credit, by providing paid leave, by making sure that we have investments in housing, that we create workforce and training opportunities so that for those millions of jobs that we're creating, that it reflects the diversity with women and people of color and not those who already have these opportunities. And so just like I am for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, I am for the Build Back Better Act because we need infrastructure and we need human infrastructure. And guess what? Housing is infrastructure.
Yes.
It is a fundamental right, and it's something that is worth fighting for. And so I look forward to working with all of you in the coming days and weeks to make sure that my colleagues do what we said we would do.
Yes.
You gave us the majority that we would deliver for the American people. I will, and I will tell my Republican colleagues this: these bills are bipartisan. Why? Because Republicans and independents and Democrats in our districts back home support these bills. And if you're not willing to vote for your constituents, then sadly, I will do my job to vote for my constituents and for yours too. Because Build Back Better is worth fighting for. Thank you all.
Yeah. Woo.
Keep up the work. Keep up the fight. Yes, sir. Thank you. We want to, once again, a round of applause for Representative Horsford.
Thank you.
We talked to many members of Congress, and we asked them to come out. Many promised to do so. Some will be here later, but we just really want to acknowledge those that are really fighting to end homelessness in America. Representative Horsford is the person that I think is at the top of the heap of people who really make a commitment to the people in their community. So once again, let's just give them a round of applause.
Yeah.
We really appreciate all of the members of Congress, all of the advocates that are here. The next person we want to introduce as a speaker is one of the most amazing advocates that is in DC. Her organization is absolutely the leader when it comes to policy around homelessness. There is no dispute about that. The National Low Income Housing Coalition has lifted their voices in a way that no one else has been able to do. And we really appreciate their partnership, their support, and their leadership. And among their leaders is Sarah Sabian. She is the Vice President of the National Low Income Housing Coalition. If you see any policy work around this issue, they're probably responsible for it. So I want to bring her up today and have her share some words. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. Sarah Sabian.
I'm so happy to be here with you today. It's a tough act to follow with the congressman, but I'm here because there are targeted investments in housing in the Build Back Better Act that reaches a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to end homelessness and put us on a path to housing stability and housing equity for everyone. But just last night we learned that congressional leaders in the White House talked about cutting investments in housing from $322 billion to maybe $100 billion or less.
No, same.
We can't afford these cuts. And these cuts cannot come at the expense of the lowest income and the most marginalized people in our country who need safe, stable housing. We are in the midst of a housing crisis and a homelessness crisis. Nationally, we have a shortage of 7 million homes for the lowest income and most marginalized renters. There is no state, there is no congressional district where there is enough affordable housing for people who need it most. And to keep a roof over their heads, 8 million of the lowest income renters pay half of their income on rent, which means they have very few resources left over to buy groceries. But those who are most harmed are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and we cannot stand for that.
No.
The housing investments in the Build Back Better Act directly address the underlying causes of this crisis. It would expand rental assistance to 1 million households to bridge the gap between what they can afford and what their housing costs. By preserving public housing and building new homes through the National Housing Trust Fund, we can make sure that there are more than 330,000 new homes for people with the lowest incomes. We can preserve public housing for 2.5 million residents. Any cuts to the Build Back Better Act cannot come at the expense of our nation's lowest income and most marginalized people. So when they're talking about cuts to housing programs, they are putting these investments for those who need it the most at risk. We cannot stand for that. We need everybody to be calling their members of Congress. We need those members of Congress to be calling the President and the White House, congressional leaders, Speaker Pelosi, Senate Leader Schumer. We will not stand for these cuts in our communities. We have resources on the table that could give everybody who is experiencing homelessness a home today if they want it. We cannot lose this opportunity. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We have to take it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate your words and coming out and supporting this cause. Next, I'm going to bring out Ruth White, who is Executive Director from the National Center for Housing and Child Welfare. We're excited to have Ruth here. I know Ruth is going to bring us some passionate, fiery words, and so I'm so looking forward to it. So come on and enjoy yourself here, Ruth.
I'm actually here with math, to be honest, not so much fire and brimstone, but more simple math. So I understand that the housing provisions of the Biden-Harris administration Build Back Better plan are on the chopping block. So I'm here to tell you how expensive that will be for the American taxpayer. So the reality is that we'll never calculate the emotional toll on the children and families and individuals who suffer from homelessness. But my organization, the National Center for Housing and Child Welfare, every year creates a cost-benefit analysis showing how expensive it is to the American taxpayer when families are separated simply because the parents cannot afford safe, decent housing. Every year, 28,000 children enter America's foster care system simply because their parents are poor and cannot afford suitable housing. That is 1 in 10 children that enter the foster care system. That foster care placement, that massive amount of foster care placements, it's totally unforgivable, totally immoral, costs us as taxpayers $800 million in foster care placement. If we were to pay for a housing subsidy and supportive services for every single one of those families to reunify those children with their parents, as taxpayers, we would save $577 million. And that is an immediate transfer on the balance sheet. That is an immediate transfer on the balance sheet. It is an annual savings to the American taxpayer. The other group of people that suffer massively due to America's housing costs that are wrapped up in the child welfare system are young people who are neither reunified with their parents nor find permanency through adoption, and they age out facing the intersection of adulthood and childhood alone. Every year, 5,000 of those young people are immediately released into the homeless services system. 5,000 of those children. So when they reach adulthood, they navigate the streets on their own, and many of them end up in the criminal justice system because they have no other means to support themselves. That costs anywhere from $56,000 to $125,000 a year. That same young person in their own apartment with some semblance of supportive services will only cost the American taxpayer about $10,000 to $12,000. It's
math.
obvious to everyone that the way to solve a housing problem is with housing. So the idea that out of everything in the Build Back Better plan, that housing would be on the chopping block, I think is mystifying to even the American just with no experience in housing whatsoever. So obvious. So I also want to offer that the best way to deliver these resources is to talk directly to people who have been affected by these systems and lived through these systems. So I've had the great privilege over the last 6 years to work directly with foster youth and alumni of America's foster care system who looked at all of the resources that America has, and they've figured out a way to synchronize housing vouchers with emancipation from foster care, make them predictable, and universalize them across the country. These young people studied the most obscure regulations that HUD has on the books and worked with Congresswoman Maxine Waters, chair of the Financial Services Committee, Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, and they did actually do this in a bipartisan effort. They also worked with Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa. They worked with Congressman Mike Turner of Southwestern Ohio. And working with all these people and doing all the painstaking research, these young people who are products of the foster care system and who also suffer from homelessness, despite the fact that they were working and going to school, these young people figured out a way to make a seismic shift in American social policy called the Foster Youth Independence Initiative. But this program synchronizes Section 8 or housing choice vouchers with emancipation. They're time-limited vouchers. But we need resources to make those vouchers available to you. These are the kinds of things we're going to be able to do with the historic investment in affordable housing in the Build Back Better plan. It is unacceptable to allow housing to end up on the cutting room floor. I've not met one American that thinks that is a good idea. When you make use of resources like housing and you synchronize them the way that homeless youth, homeless families, and all of these advocates have asked, you will allow a platform for self-sufficiency, going to school, and building a family that creating fertile territory for people to grow as humans, to create their own wealth, to go out and get jobs, be better workers, be in a better mindset, to be productive in their workplace, is a recipe for ending homelessness. And it is brought to you courtesy of young people with the lived experience and the passion to get this right. So we have to work together to make sure that these wonderful Congress people have done their job, that we can get this through the finish line with the housing resources fully paid for in this bill. Thank you. I'll hand it back over to Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ruth. Ruth White is just an amazing advocate. People shake when Ruth steps onto the platform and walk up to the hill. She's an amazing, fearless advocate for foster children in this country, and we thank her for her work and really appreciate your work. We've had a lot of conversation about the policy, about the advocacy, but it's really important that this is not just about the numbers or the policy that is around this bill. It's really about the people. So the next few speakers will be people that have been affected or still affected by the failures of our system. So the first person that I'm going to bring up is Don Gardner. I've known Don for a very long time. He'll tell you his story. I won't tell it for you. And Don Gardner is one of the speakers with the National Coalition Speakers Bureau, and he's going to tell you about what's going on with him today. Don Gardner.
First of all, give honor to God. My Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and the precious, precious Holy Spirit. I thank each and every one of you, the National Coalition for the Homeless, all the organizations that are represented here, and also Congress. And God bless you. Somebody say love. Somebody say love. That's what I feel out here, and I know that's what it takes to end the homelessness. It takes compassion. It takes love. The love I'm talking about is not so much with the love that you have for your father and mother, your sisters and brothers, and things of that sort. Nothing's wrong with that, but I'm talking about the love of God. From the heart. From the heart. And unless we embrace homelessness, and unless we embrace
everything that's going on with this country and around the world, there's going to continue to be terrorists, there's going to continue to be mental problems, there's going to continue to be drama and trauma in our country and the world. For those who don't know, God put the whole world on notice. He put the whole world on notice because we were worshiping idols, worshiping one another, worshiping celebrities and athletes and entertainers, politicians, and so on and so forth. But I want you to know one thing, that this country is still one of the greatest countries in the world. It's a great place to be. I was born and raised here in Washington, D.C. And I'm very hurt, and I'm discouraged, and I'm disappointed about what's going on. And I'm ashamed of how this country is treating us, the family that we call. When our money, our forefathers put in God, we trust. We better go back to trusting God. We better go back to praying to God and putting Him first in all that we do. I'll share with you right now, presently, I'm living in a shelter. No choice of my own, by force, because of the pandemic. And I'm sure there's thousands of us in that same situation. The shelter I'm in is a great place, yes, but it's not a place for no human beings. Brother Joel mentioned that homelessness and shelter is not a place for human beings. Shelters are for animals and not really for animals. How can you have more animal shelters than you have shelters for human beings? That's ridiculous. We've done it unrepulsive here in this country, the land of the free. How can you spend over $3 trillion in Afghanistan in 20 years, but we lost over 2,500 soldiers, 20,000 or better are injured or some type of deformity to their bodies? But guess what, family? Guess what, Congress? Guess what, United States? Guess what, world? We got 13,000 homeless people that die every year. 13,000. 260,000 in the last 20 years. 260,000 in the last 20 years. What is the country doing about that? Do they mention that? No. They just talk about how you put us in shelters, put us in there like animals. The shelter I'm living in, they said social distancing. The devil is a liar. When you have us 2 in the room, and 8 by 15, 2 in the room, you got to sleep with a mask on, check in twice a day, and then you got a curfew for adults at 10 o'clock at night. What is that about? What is that about when people are there because of the pandemic? What happened to forgiveness in this country? What happened to forgiveness on our utility bills? Forgiveness for our mortgages? Forgiving us for everything that we need? Keeping us right where we were before the pandemic? How the other countries and other people in the world can get a stimulus check every month, and we got to fight for $600, $1,400, and $1,200, and you tell us you love us and you care about us. The devil is a liar. That's a lie, the fist for hell. Take the cap off the emergency housing voucher. It shouldn't even be a cap. How can you put a cap on vouchers? How can you point out who's going to get a voucher today, who's going to get a voucher tomorrow? How about doing the Oprah Winfrey thing? You get a voucher, you get a voucher, you get a voucher. Everybody get a voucher. There should be a limit on human lives. There should be a limit on, we got veterans who serve this country so we can have a place to call home, and they come home and don't have nowhere. Over 400 veterans in the street of Washington, D.C. On the streets of Washington, D.C. And for us to have a home, and they have a place not to call home. It's a human right to have a place to call home. There's no place like home. Just because I'm homeless, it doesn't give you a right to treat me like an animal, treat me any kind of way that you want to because I'm homeless. I have a right. I got feelings too. That's right. My roommate suffered. There's a lot of mental illness going on just where I'm at. We have 310 in a hotel in Prince George's County in Beltsville. 310 people. The hotel only owns 150. We have those on top of each other. We have no cooking facilities, so we're living off microwave and processed food. So there go our health right there. There go our health, gentlemen, ladies. There go our health, politicians. No cap on the emergency housing vouchers. If we gave everybody that's homeless in the country, which is close to over 250,000 people that sleep on the outside or some type of shelter or transition home, give them a voucher. When it costs $30 billion, we spent $3 trillion in Afghanistan. I have no problems with helping other countries. I have no problems with helping any race, creed, color, religion. I got a big problem. You only help the people in your backyard. You don't even help the people in your backyard. And And do you call yourself the greatest country? You own the money you got in God we trust. While forefathers are turning over in their grave because you're going against that. You're going against that. Somebody say love. Somebody say love. That's what it takes, Congress. The love that you see out here. That's what it takes. I'm not asking you to give all that you got. I'm asking you to give what you can give. Take a cap off homelessness. Take a cap off who gets about you. Take a cap off. It should be a cap on people's lives. Give everybody a voucher. What it costs for every year? 30 billion a year? 260 billion for 20 years? Wow. For real people? In this. Let's end this. I'll share a story with you guys, and then I'll be finished. At this shelter where I'm at, this gentleman, he used to fight me verbally every day for 3 weeks. I was going to ask him to remove me because this gentleman had a knife, and at one point I never feared. I don't fear man, I only fear God. I doesn't fear the one that can kill the body and soul. I fear the one who can kill the body and soul in hell, and that's God himself. And the Lord put in my spirit not to leave that gentleman. But one night we got into it, and I let him have it. And sometimes it's good to be a lamb, but sometimes that lion comes out. The lion came out. A gentleman broke down and told me what was going on with him. He thought I was undercover police. I was there to film him and get him in more trouble than what he was. That gentleman, to make a long story short, watched his mother burn up in the fire. He could not save her. And he was suffering. We cried together. Mental illness people, therapy people, everybody here needs it. I have 3 counselors. 3. And they said, are you suicidal? I said, no, but I'm idle. I'm idle. No, I'm not suicidal, but I'm idle. Well, 2 days after me and him cried, 2 people OD'd and committed suicide in the shelter, 3 doors down from me, because they gave up hope. They lost faith in themselves. They lost faith in the system. They lost faith in people. Most of all, they lost faith in themselves and God. Over 800,000 people committed suicide last year. 800,000. Because they lost hope and faith. Keep the hope alive. Keep faith. Congress, come on. Send the help out. Get committees and task force to hold these states and cities accountable, man. You got the money. Congress giving these the money. Why are the states and cities holding on to that money? People getting kicked out. Over millions of people getting kicked out and evicted. Every day, the shelters full. Over 35%, 40% of people that's in shelters are women with children. Come on, states, counties. Release some money. What are you holding it for? Give it up. Don't worry about what they're going to do with it. Don't worry about where they're going with it. They need it for rent. They need it to live. Everybody gets one. Everybody gets a voucher. There's no number on a voucher. Of course they got to be screened. Of course they need help. But the main help they need is a place to call home. Like you talking about these little homes you're building with no bathrooms. Stop giving us a bad day. Stop giving us a bad lunch. Give us a home. Give us a place to live. To God be the glory. Thank you. God bless.
Yeah. Woo!
Wow, Don just told us exactly what we need to hear, right? He told us, first of all, we got to take the cap off. I mean, he said it. We have to take the cap off. He gave us a clear example of what people are experiencing. And it's important that we're hearing this firsthand. There is this quote that I heard one time, and it said, our inherent worth, we have inherent worth as people, and our worth is so inherent that it does not need to be on the negotiation table. This is what we're talking about right now, is that people should not be on the negotiation table when we're talking about infrastructure. And so as we continue forth with our program, I want us to listen to Don. Thank you so much, Don, for your passionate words. We need to listen to him about taking the cap off. And as we move forward, I want to bring up our next wonderful advocate, Reggie Black. Reggie is part of the People for the Fairness Coalition. He is an advocate in the DC area. The People for Fairness Coalition is involved in making sure they empower individuals to end homelessness and unhoused issues in the DC area through advocacy, empowerment, and resources. So we want to welcome Reggie Black to the stage.
Yeah, Reggie. Good morning.
Well, let me hear you. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Reginald Black. I am a native Washingtonian, and I'm actually formerly unhoused. I experienced housing instability in the District of Columbia for a decade in the nation's capital. Today, I'm a lived experience appointee to the District of Columbia Interagency Council on Homelessness. As before, I am the now executive director of People for Fairness Coalition. I'm here with my FACE members, which stands for Focus, Attitude, Commitment to Excellence. I'm also a new business owner in the District of Columbia. Okay. And I'm here today to fight for our unhoused neighbors and all of our neighbors living across the country to access the basic necessity to live better, free, and pursue happiness. I'm honored to be in your presence today and to highlight that we need to draw the connections necessary to end housing instability for all of our unhoused neighbors. It is unconscionable that we have watched during this COVID-19 pandemic and us conducting outreach to several encampments in the city, our peers to struggle and struggle and struggle to provide hygiene and to secure their housing placements. It is unconscionable that we have close to 10,000 people actually in the District of Columbia unhoused. We know that housing is infrastructure, and one of the most vital infrastructures to end homelessness, housing instability, and create income and wealth generation is public housing. Those residents have lived in horrible conditions for years. They've dealt with rats, roaches, asbestos, mold, and lead. And now these units are prime real estate. People want to evict folks from these properties. In 16 to 17 years, 60,000 African-American residents have been displaced from here in the District of Columbia. It even dates back to 1996 when the Hope 6 grants were issued to PHAs across the nation. We have not replaced this vital infrastructure that could assist who are overrepresented in the unhoused community, which are Black people. Black people, 86.4% of those folks are unhoused here in the District of Columbia, and we must do better. United Nations Declaration of Human Rights General Resolution 217A 3 of 10, Article 25 states that we have a right to medical care, we have a right to food, we have a right to shelter, and that this includes, that's a very special word, housing, housing. That's what we want, and we want it now. No matter the circumstances no matter the circumstances, we should be providing this right. And you know, we could spend all kinds of money to evacuate what would be considered traitors to their own country. But why do we have over 200, 300 U.S. veterans here in the District of Columbia unhoused? This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable. Why are we spending so much money on people who, have no ties here, right? They haven't fought for this country, honestly. Why are our veterans dying on the street, in wheelchairs, on walkers? Why are they languishing in our shelters for years? This is unacceptable. Providing basic needs is not the only issue regarding housing infrastructure that exists. Ownership, income growth, and wealth generation has to be at the center of it. Residents don't have a chance to own. Our severely rent-burdened populations do not have the chance to own. Our unhoused neighbors do not have a chance to own. These are the things we must address, and we must address it quickly. It is a violation of human rights that we, this country, have not articulated how we are going to uphold Article 17 of that same General Resolution 217A, 3 of 10, in which it states that all have the ability to own their own property, alone or in association with others, and that no one is to be deprived of this ownership. No one is to be deprived of this ownership. And if we are the housing rights police, human rights police, how come so many African American residents in this city, the nation's capital, have been deprived of owning their own businesses, of owning their own communities, their own homes and transportation. Why is it these residents can't own their future?
Right.
We as a nation must do better. We must do better. As I feel the pain and anguish. I've been through it for 10 years unhoused myself. I witness it every day with our neighbors. Every day. And this is why we must do better. We must forge partnerships to make sure that people are expressed in words, our need to be constituent units of our society, our means of governing our classes in association with our form of dignity. Let us work together and relate to being something transformative. I look forward to working with all of you, and there's one thing that I must emphasize, that housing is a human right.
Yes.
Reginald Black, and I hope you guys say it with me, we gonna fight, fight, fight. Housing is a human right. Housing is a human right.
Fight, fight, fight.
Housing is a human right.
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 And if y'all want to pass infrastructure bills, that's got to be at the city.
Yes. Woo!
So I couldn't leave you without having somebody of lived experience with what's going on here. So I have my friend Ms. Rita Saul, who's going to relate to you what her situation is. She's a great gal, great street citizen advocate, and member of FACE, and she's here to tell us her story.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Rita.
Hey, Rita.
Washingtonian.
Yeah.
I lived on a block on Congress Street for 40 years. And I grew up in an 8-bedroom house, which is also on that block.
Yeah.
Which is also on that block. I'm wearing my mask because I haven't taken the COVID shot. I lived on the block for 40 years. And I gotta say, the house that I lived in was an 8-bedroom house, which some people consider a mansion. Thanks to my mother, she made that happen without assistance from the government. She didn't get food stamps, she didn't get any government assistance, and she grew the 3 of us up in an 8-bedroom house. I'd like to say that not just my mother, but also the big mamas that was living, when they was living, we didn't see homelessness because they would let people sleep on their kitchen floor or in their living room. It didn't matter. They could be inside. So I want to credit the older folks for not having homelessness. And I think that actually, since the older folks are gone now, and now the homelessness has been more noticeable, I kind of feel like everybody does deserve a home. And I also feel that when you have an option to stay in a shelter, sometimes you do. As far as I'm concerned, I've never stayed in a shelter. I've always tented. From what I hear, the shelters do have issues. Sometimes it's bed bugs or thievery, but whatever it is, I've already made a decision that I will never, ever stay in a shelter. I have 4 tents. In this camp now. A couple of them is for storage and a couple of them is for living purposes. And the reason I said that I would never stay in a shelter is because right now I'm like maybe 10 days from being 60 years old. I'm 59. My birthday is on the 24th of 60.
Happy birthday.
I'll be 60 years old. So since I've never experienced the shelter, I can't see myself wanting to do it now. I'm getting close to 60. So I think I'll continue to tent until housing becomes available. And I just want to say that if I'm forced to be evicted from tenant, then I would just find another location and just put up tents. Because I refuse to go to a shelter for the reasons I said, age-wise and issues with bed bugs, people, whatever the issues are. Those are the reasons that I would never go to a shelter. Basically, I'm just saying, if they close the encampments down, I'll just relocate.
Hang tight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your voice, and we are all here for you. We're here to change the course of history so people don't have to sleep outside. Many people here have had that experience. It's not a day in the park. It's really tough, and we're working hard for you. So thank you so much for lending your voice to this event today. And we're going to move to our next speaker here. He is the income policy analyst at the National Coalition for the Homeless. Also does a lot of local work around encampments in D.C. Just an amazing advocate, working on changing the course of history in D.C. by providing a really important new project. I can't talk about it yet, but he's on the verge of making that happen. I'm going to give you Kelvin Lassiter, income policy analyst, National Coalition for the Homeless.
Today is the day that we will begin to bring America home now.
Yes.
In case you didn't hear, housing is a human right.
Yes.
Oh, y'all didn't hear me. Housing is a human right.
Woo!
Housing is infrastructure. As the late civil rights icon and Congressman John Lewis would say, we are here today to get into good trouble.
Yes.
Oh, y'all didn't hear me. We are here today to get into good trouble.
Woo!
Governors, it is time to release the money.
Yes.
So people can live. States, it is time for you to care about homeless people. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about what it's like to be homeless during COVID. First of all, it's your job to keep homeless people safe during COVID. When you don't keep homeless people safe during COVID, it's a human rights violation.
Yes.
We are in a public health emergency right now. Oh, y'all didn't hear me. We're in a public health emergency right now.
Yes.
Before now, we were already in a public health emergency.
That's right.
COVID just magnified it. We cannot stand for 11 million people to potentially become homeless because states won't release the money. 11 million people, I want that to sink in for cause and effect. Number two, COVID is a disease that we cannot see. But what we can see is the effects of what's happening to the people because the states and governors are not doing their job.
That's right.
Y'all didn't hear me.
Come on now, Kelvin. Go ahead, Kelvin.
What we can see is violence by city governments on the homeless called encampment sweeps.
Yes.
Physical and emotional violence taking place.
Mm-hmm.
When everything a person may own is getting tossed in the trash. And for the record, human beings are not exempt from getting tossed in the trash either.
Yep.
3 weeks ago, just a half a mile from here where we're standing, a human being was in his tent during a encampment sweep, and a bulldozer attempted to pick him up and put him in the trash while he was sleeping in his tent.
No.
That ain't right. That ain't right.
Ain't right.
Shameful. Number 3, the health of people who are evicted during COVID can decline physically and emotionally. It becomes a challenge. Washing your hands becomes a challenge. Using the bathroom becomes a challenge. Taking a shower becomes a challenge. Being able to quarantine becomes a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But most assuredly, your human rights and dignity are the most thing that is very challenged.
Mm-hmm.
Not too far from here as well, a lot of housing for the wealthy is being built. Skyscrapers are everywhere. But people who are unhoused are not going into those apartments and condos that are being built.
No.
That ain't right.
No.
That ain't right.
Ain't right.
Shameful. Finally, let me close by saying, here's the solution. Governors, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Oh, y'all didn't hear me. Governors, states, love your neighbors as you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Stop the evictions. Landlords, let people keep their housing. We want housing. We want housing.
We want housing.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we want it?
Now.
Housing is a human right.
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 Housing is infrastructure.
Yes.
Housing is infrastructure.
Housing is infrastructure.
As a great philosopher known as the godfather of soul would say, we'd rather live on our feet than die on our knees. Say it loud. We are here today to get into good trouble. Thank you. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
All right. Woo!
So we have just a couple of additional speakers left. We do have another person who has lived the experience of homelessness. We certainly want to put a face on the issue. So please, I want to welcome Ayub to the stage, who is also a Speakers Bureau with the National
Woo!
Thank all you lovely people for coming out here and seeing me because I got a hole in my chest. God brought me back and it's no mess. I'm here, it's real. Homelessness, I know what it's like to go to a McDonald's and wash up. I had a friend named Smokey, he was a doctor. He lost his practice, but he died on the Key Bridge because he was homeless. Smokey couldn't talk. And I never talked with Smokey. But this is my day to talk with Smokey because he died on the Key Bridge back in the 70s. And he's been the amount of people that's dying has rapidly grown. Those old folks knew what they were talking about when they had what they had was the homeless, where they put caps on rents, where they weren't paying no rent. And I went down to city council and they said, we're going to get rid of that. Because people went in there and said, we can't do the good jobs And we need to get rid of rent control. If you get rid of that rent control, we're going to do a good job. Well, I'm here to tell you it's a lie because I had to move out of my apartment because 2018, I came home to mold. The toilet overflowed. They promised me it wasn't going to happen. I went to the mayor's office, and the mayor's office sent me to Apartment of Advocates. Advocates sent me down to AARP. AARP sent me with a lawyer, and the lawyer didn't know what he was doing. And the judge told me, go back in that apartment with the mold. And I live with mold. I have witnesses. I have people that know that is right here, right now, who knows that I was living in mold because the landlords say, we can do a better job, let us raise the rent. That's why we have homelessness. I can't speak much longer because my time is short, but I thank all of you lovely people for coming out and hearing my voice.
We hear it.
Woo! And Ayub, we thank you for lending your voice. Thank you for having the courage to come up here and share your story. I know it isn't easy, but it's necessary because we need to make sure that people see the person behind the statistic, the person behind the legislation. So we thank all of you for coming to speak to us today. We have one additional speaker who's going to come up. Her name's Mary. Mary's behind me. Mary, please come up.
All right. Woo!
So good morning, and so I'm here today. It's a pleasure to be here and have an opportunity to speak. Now I have a very unique situation. I have a very unique situation. I am not homeless because of the pandemic. I was wrongfully terminated 13 times, starting April of 2013, and it ended up in 13 terminations. And so that's how it got to that point. But more importantly, there seems to be a new group of homeless persons that have been created that are victims of identity theft, where you are not a felon. And people in corrections work with a number of felons who they might get an expungement, but that information can still be researched and gotten up. So a number of persons who were previously convicted as felons have assumed my identity. So that has accumulated in my homelessness. Now, the writer has been homeless for 20 months straight after the East Side Shelter, located at 9150 Franklin Square Drive in Rosedale, Maryland, offered me a job developer to redo my resume, a case manager, and a social worker. These three persons assisted me in obtaining 3 job offers. And this is last year. Now, these jobs were from the COVID-19 Baltimore City temporary no benefits opportunities. One job paid $75,000 as a program manager. The other 2 positions were contract tracer positions, COVID-19 no benefits, $40,000 an hour, and then another full-time permanent job with full benefits and insurance, and the ability for me to be promoted and do marketing was offered to me. They even had me working on Sundays, and they asked me, would that conflict with anything, and I said, yes, church. They changed my shift so I could go to church on Sundays, and I was blocked for all of those positions. So I had resources, I had a number of persons who were assisting me in terms of my resume, in terms of giving me mock interviews, critiquing me, in terms of meeting with me on a regular basis, one-on-one, and giving me intensive case management. And they did their job up in Rosedale, Maryland. I would say that. In Baltimore, they did all they could do for me. And this would have gotten me on my feet. They even found me a studio apartment in Essex, Maryland at $789 per month. This is last year now. That would have been my rent, my Baltimore gas and electric, and my water. And she says, a studio, you have a kitchen area, a little area to sleep. I said, that's cool. It's just me. That's cool. She said, it's a start. that was going to be great. I could have gotten out the shelter. You see what I'm saying? It's going to pay my first month's rent, my security deposit. They said, listen, you can save a few paychecks, so when you leave us, you got money in the bank. I was blocked. This new identity theft is really real. A number of persons are posing as me and have a documented proof. It's not delusion. I have places and things I can show you where my name has been altered. But more importantly, I was offered another position at a nearby hotel, Home 2 Suites, in Nottingham, Maryland. It's really Rosedale, Maryland, but it's Nottingham. One of these persons had a prostitute who was using my identity. So I got blocked for the reservation agent position because she was at the hotel posing as Michelle Rashawn. So my question is, I have accrued a lot of debt with all of these terminations. I was able to keep my place for close to 5 years up in Baltimore from 2014 to 2019. But what do you offer a woman who is being utilized as a mascot to hide whores that lie around with males and females using their identity? Because the people in Rosedale, I don't think anybody else can do any more than these people did for me. They did their job. So I don't know what you can do with that. I mean, it is what it is. I could have actually been living in my own place today. I could have been living in my studio. You know what I mean? And I didn't have to be even down here.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you get into a shelter and the staff, they do their job, but you're blocked, and you're blocked, and you're blocked. So this group has relegated me to a lifestyle of poverty because we're using your identity to mask underground black market of businesses in your identity. Because number one, you're not a felon, you're not a red flag to Homeland Security, the FBI. So you seem like a good person to hide behind. I'm just putting it out there.
That's a shame.
So this is a new homeless person. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Same.
So I want to thank Mary for bringing us her story. Again, it's important that we are not just talking about statistics today, but we're talking about real people. The next person that I'm about to bring up is our featured speaker today, and she is a real person. She is a person who has really, really been fighting to make sure that homeless dollars are in every part of legislation that's announced on the Hill. She's fought very hard for the Housing Trust Fund. The National Coalition and several other agencies helped to pass that bill, but it would not have happened without Maxine Waters.
Yes.
Maxine Waters is truly a congresswoman for the people, and I'm going to bring her up right now. She has a lot to share. We thank you so much, Congressman Waters, for being here today. Thank you.
Woo!
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I want to thank you for organizing this rally to help me in every way that you possibly can, because you know the struggle we're having with the reconciliation bill. And we know that we started out with a budget of $3.5 trillion to cover the needs, not only of housing, but, children and climate and healthcare and all of that. In that budget, I had a housing budget of $327 billion. $327 billion
Yes.
to deal with homelessness and to deal with housing, period. So we've been working, we worked in the CARES Act for money for homelessness. We've been always focused on what we can do, number one, to get people into safe and decent housing, and how we can move forward to have those kinds of units available. And so I just want to go down with this budget with you. At this time, I'm extraordinarily concerned and a bit disturbed about what I hear is going on in the White House right now. As we all know that we're not going to get the $3.5 trillion, and I don't know what the actual numbers are. I've heard everything from $1.5 trillion to $1.75 trillion up to well, let me just say this. Housing is infrastructure.
Yes.
And it is the basis of this economy. And while we talk about all of the other needs, whether it's education,
whether it's healthcare, whether it's climate, whatever. None of those things can successfully happen in this society without a decent place to live.
That's right.
That's right. Talk.
In order for the children to go to school every day, they have to have safe, decent places to live. We have children that are going to school from the cars. They're sleeping in the automobiles at night. We have people who are looking for jobs that don't have a place to take a shower, to change clothes, or to hang their clothes somewhere. Even with health care, if you're talking about providing health care for the children, they don't even have the possibility with a computer to chase down the menus that you can hardly follow anyway, to get the help that they say is available. And so housing is everything.
Yes.
And I have tried to make the point by helping to coin the phrase housing is infrastructure.
Yes.
And so we have a lot of people who are supporting us, but somehow somebody in the White House think they know more than we know.
Oh.
And we're working on this stuff every day.
That's right.
And we're holding hearings every day. And we're seeing people all over this country who are sleeping on the ground, who are sleeping in makeshift tents, who are sleeping on floorboards. We're seeing people who are looking at trash cans every day. Everywhere, all over this country. And so, when I put together this budget with my staff, we put in it, I think, $80 billion for public housing.
Yes.
To make sure that we do something about the upkeep, the renovation, and the repair.
Yes.
You know, elevators don't work. You also know that at one point in time, just last year, there was one of the public housing developments in New York that had no heat.
Oh.
No heat whatsoever. So, when you take a look at the fact that they have not been supported with the kind of money, with the kind of resources to keep them up and to keep them safe and secure. We need this money all over the country. So that's what we have. We have that for public housing.
Yes.
Then you have $90 billion in there for vouchers.
Yes.
All over this country, people are begging for vouchers. This is the subsidy. Some of these people are working every day, but they don't make enough money.
That's right, come on.
They have a little money, but they need to be subsidized.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stop at this point before I go into everything else to tell you. The latest that I heard was that the White House was saying they were going to not support a dime for vouchers.
Oh.
Not 1 penny for vouchers.
That's a shame.
Zero for vouchers. I want to tell you, I can't take this.
Yeah.
Can I take
We can't either.
No. But I was on Vermont Avenue in my district, helping to get the homeless into some hotel rooms for the night so that they could transition.
Yes.
Come on now, that's what it's about.
I have people coming from all around the community. Women who are saying this morning, I have to find a hotel room every night. I have to break up the money in order to have a place for me and my children to sleep. And so they needed vouchers. They needed someplace to stay. And someone said, well, you know, in my city, we don't have any more places. You don't have any more places because of that discrimination.
Yes, that's right.
And you're not fighting against it in the city. You're not doing anything to help make the vouchers acceptable in community.
That's right.
And so vouchers are extremely and very important.
Yeah.
I didn't want to fight with the White House, but I will.
All right. Woo!
We also have in this budget money for the National Housing Trust.
Yes.
Remember, we created this with Bonnie Frank? And we've been waiting for it to be funded adequately so that we can get some units built.
Yes.
So I put $36 billion into this bill
Woo!
to develop affordable housing with the National Trust Fund.
Yes.
In addition to that, the home program that's in the cities already. We put more money, $31 billion in for the home program. And of course, we put another $8 billion in for CDBG.
All right.
State News for some effort to help people with their food. Now,
this is not a lot of money based on what the needs are in this country.
Yeah.
We have people who are paying over 50% of their income for rent.
Mm-hmm.
We have people who, again, I'm not going to talk about the homeless. We know about the homeless.
Uh-huh.
And we know that we have been suffering homelessness far too long in a country that is the richest country in the world.
That's right.
And we know that as we talk about build back better, you can't build a damn thing unless you build a house.
Yes.
Build some units.
Yeah.
Build some affordable homes.
Yeah.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is a fight that we must consider is our top priority.
Yes.
This is our top priority.
Yes.
If we ever want to make seriously known that we care about homelessness, we've got to say no, no, no to any attempt to reduce this budget in ways that will eliminate all vouchers.
That's right.
And then cut back on everything else we're talking about.
Yeah, that's not right.
So let us make sure that we do several things. Use all of the platforms in order to engage the White House and the leadership. Let's make sure that we're on Facebook, that we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on all of the platforms. All day long, every day. Housing is infrastructure.
Yes.
Housing
is infrastructure.
Housing
is infrastructure.
Housing
is infrastructure.
Housing is infrastructure.
Yes.
And so, this is where we are. And you know all of the tragic stories about how families have been separated, how people have died out in the cold. You know all of the tragic stories about children who have suffered and now entered into that area of mental illnesses because they have suffered out on the streets with no real place to live. And parents that really couldn't do anything about it. And so we've got to fight.
Yes.
We've got to struggle. We've got to make sure they understand that we're serious about this issue. And we want the money. And we're not going to stand for all of the vouchers to be eliminated. We'll take a fair share of cuts across the board.
Yeah.
We'll take a fair share, but you cannot place all of this on the back of housing.
Yes.
You better go find it from someplace else.
Yes.
We're not going to suffer it all.
Yes.
Enough said. You've got to do. Any questions that you may have, any comments you may have, welcome. Yes, sir.
Yes. My name is Andrew Anderson. I'm the outreach director for my coalition, People Fairness Coalition, and I'm so happy to have you here. Out of all, it's just a comment. Out of all the Congress members that we see in Congress on TV, on C-SPAN, this is a very important issue, and I'm glad that you're taking the front row position right now. You're taking the lead on this, along with your other constituents, and being able to address these issues. Just a few weeks ago, as one brother pointed out, we had an encampment that was closed. Homeless people driven out, relocated. No concern whatsoever. National Park Police, other agencies got involved. National Park Service, which is really unusual for the National Park Service to do this, even though the eviction was in a park. But still, no concern whatsoever. So I thank you very much for taking the lead on this. And and again, I would hope that other Congress people take notice of what you're saying and listening today, because we need to hear more voices like you. This issue needs to be up front and center. We need to pay more attention to this, because as we speak right now, there's a plan right now for another encampment to be evicted. And unless we stand up and unless we say no to these closures, this is going to continue to happen. So thank you, Maxine. I thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Yes.
Let me just say that when you hear people talk about homelessness, everybody thinks, oh, what a shame. Isn't this awful? This is so terrible. But when it comes time to do something about it, they don't really want to do the right thing. And it does cost money.
That's right.
To make it available. We need the units, and we need the services to go with the units.
Yes.
Supportive services. Madam President? We need those supportive services to go along with those housing units. And we've got to fight for it.
Yes.
I want you to know, and I'll tell you this quickly, even though it's a little bit different. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I was raised in St. Louis, right next to Ferguson.
Yeah.
You know where Ferguson is. And so I have 12 brothers and sisters, 13 of them. We never really had adequate housing. We had housing here and there. My mother tried to build a little house. We didn't have running water. We didn't have indoor facilities and all of that. So I get it and I understand it. And I know that we lived in old housing that was inadequate. And in the wintertime, the pipes would freeze. On the inside, the ice would be, and you had to build the fire over the pipes to loosen up the water, etc., etc. I also know that at one point in time, after I was out as an adult, I still had families at home. Lived in Fluid Argo. I don't know if you ever heard about Fluid Argo in St. Louis. They had to close it down. The people had nowhere to go after they closed it down. And the Bond, and the Cabrini Green in Chicago, and all of that. People who are oftentimes suffering in public housing. People who can't even afford the rent of public housing, ending up on the streets and nowhere to go in America. This has got to stop.
Yes.
You've got to stop walking over people in cabinets wherever they can find a place to lay their head every night and pretending we're helping them out when we give them a damn dollar.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? They don't want a dollar, they want a home. They
On
want
change.
someplace to live. Don't come bringing any stale sandwiches to anybody.
That's right, Maxine.
Yeah.
Enough of this patronizing.
Yes.
Enough of patronizing in ways that may make your conscience feel better for the night. But I'm going to tell you, if you're doing that kind of support, you ought to feel guilty. And you cannot be safe and secure in your thinking if that's what you think you're doing to help the homeless. Let's spend some money.
All right.
Let's get some Nunes pills.
Yes.
Let's make sure that we do what is necessary to deal with what this country should be dealing with, and that is safe and secure housing for everybody.
All right.
Just briefly, Representative Maxine Waters, Representative John Conyers, who I worked with for 13 years, is smiling down on you right now from heaven. Thank you for supporting us on universal health care. Thank you for leading the effort to end homelessness. We're going to get 7,000 organizations in the campaign. We're going to get behind every bill that you've written. God bless you.
Yes. Woo! All right. Woo!
Okay, thank you so much, Representative Waters, for your words, and we're so thankful for your advocacy. Next, we're going to bring up Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, who is here for us. Has been a champion for Houston District, 18th District for a long time, and she's a senior leader in 3 different House committees.
Yes.
So we want to thank her for congressional committees. I apologize. The House committees on the Judiciary, Homeland Security, and the Budget Committee. Thank you, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee.
Woo! Yeah.
I am only rushing because you want me to be in meetings where I can raise the voices of those of you who are standing here. So let me just say that I stand 104,000% with the Honorable Maxine Waters. She is our leader. She is our guidepost. But I can assure you that I have been working on homelessness issues for more decades than I would like. And it is time now to stop the scourge, the epidemic, the pandemic of homelessness, and we must ensure the dignity of homeless persons.
Yes,
so,
we agree.
Let me be aware that in Washington, all of this always happens. But let me be very quick. Very quick. It is that persons who are homeless, that we stop taking advantage of the homeless.
Yes.
We stop tearing down places that only they can find refuge.
Yes.
We stop not building public housing.
Woo.
We stop taking money from homeless or people who are about to be evicted and then evict them anyhow. That happened in Houston, Texas. What a disgrace.
Happened here too.
We must recognize that the pandemic hurt homeless persons in terms of creating more of them.
Yes.
Because people like my brother, who did excellent work on shoe shining, was literally shut down during the pandemic.
That's right.
We must understand that homeless persons want dignity too.
Yes.
We must understand that homeless persons deserve dignity too.
Yes.
I am 100% in support of money in the infrastructure bill, Build Back Better, to once for all turn the corner of disastrous homelessness.
Yes.
When we thought we were cute some years back, that indicated, oh, we don't want any more public housing. So let's stop it. Let's let it deteriorate. Let's even tear it down. What a wrong-headed policy. To think that they could extinguish projects, housing developments, which I call them, that gave people a good house, cleaning, housing. All you needed to do was to treat them with dignity, meaning that clean up the housing, repair the housing, make it safe. Don't tear it down.
Right.
Because
Right.
you're giving future doctors, lawyers, presidents, teachers, athletes, geniuses a place to live.
That's right.
So we know that according to NPR, over 100,000 children were homeless in 2020. Nearly 11,000 of those children were living outside, and there are more numbers than that because you cannot in any essence be able to determine. In Houston, despite a federal moratorium halting evictions, Ms. Christina Ray's landlord shut off her power in her family's home when they were just a few days late. We had to go to their rescue because people began living in the streets. You saw the national headlines with people sending people out, if you will, out of their very apartment with babies and strollers.
Right.
Where is the mercy?
Right.
So I'm going to be rushing back to the Hill. I've loved meeting all of you to join Congresswoman Maxine Waters in continuing to emphasize, as we did in a meeting with leadership yesterday, you are not far from our minds. And we did it yesterday. We said you cannot forget housing in leadership.
Right.
That's right.
And leadership, Democratic leadership, who is in charge, said we will not forget housing.
Yes,
But
thank
you.
you.
Keep the fight going.
We
And
will.
we must realize as we drive through America and we see tents or we see people laying on top of heating graters where they are, or we see people on the streets, they are Americans too.
Yes.
They are humanity too.
Yes.
They are our brothers and sisters too. And so my effort is to do this. Yes, more Section 8 vouchers, more moratorium on eviction, more restoring of public housing development.
Yes.
That's what they are.
Yeah,
From
get
the
rid of
early
fair
years of
cost.
being in city council, I used to go to housing developments and say to them, this is your home. We will beautify it with you. We'll stand by. We'll plant gardens.
Yeah.
That's right.
George Floyd grew up in public housing in teeny homes. That family is proud of what they did in terms of being a light there, their mother being an activist there. My first activist years were working with those who lived in public housing. They were my buddies. They were my friends. And we fought together. In hurricanes, I would go to them and make sure that their lights were on.
Yes.
That's where I bring food trucks there because that is their home.
Yes,
I didn't
thank
walk on
you.
by like the song says. Walk on by.
Oh.
I stayed by.
Yes, thank you.
That's what we must do. Stand by
Thank
our
you.
friends. I promise you, I will never leave you. I will continue to stand by you. But more importantly, as a legislator, I will join with our esteemed chairwoman and continue the battle, continue the fight, and as well, never, never forget that you too are America. John Lewis said in his last days, I've been using this, a little small book, and he says, carry on. Carry on!
Woo!
Carry on!
Yeah.
Thank you all. Forgive me, I'm running.
Thank you. Woo!
Everybody knows that they can get a hold of me.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Another
Sheila
round of
Jackson
applause
Lee.
for
Woo!
Representative Sheila Jackson Lee from the great state of Texas. And we also want to thank Representative Waters and all of our speakers today. We're rounding down to the end of what we are here for today. We appreciate all the support. We appreciate all the wonderful speakers. We are now, we have two more things and we're going to be out of here. Right now, if Rajni Shankar-Brown can come up, she's going to, one most important element of building a movement is the arts. And so we have not had a lot of time to do arts today, but we want to start to close out with some arts. So I told you that she was a fantastic poet. I'm going to bring you Rajni Shankar-Brown, Dr. Rajni Shankar-Brown.
Abdul, Rajni.
Thank you so much. A moment of gratitude to everybody who's come out today and to those who have stood here with passion and commitment this entire time.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a movement of the people and by the people.
Mm-hmm.
And it is up to us. This is about long-term infrastructure for housing.
Yes.
We cannot have Build Back Better without housing justice prioritized.
Right.
We cannot have Build Back Better without environmental justice prioritized.
Right.
Senators Manchin and Sinema, we ask you to sleep one night on the streets.
Yes.
Experience what it is like to sleep on the ground, to wake up by rats,
Yes.
to feel the weather and have to weather the weather. We ask everyone to open their hearts and to care and to join our movement, the National Organization for Women, the National Coalition for the Homeless. We are coming together to bring America home now.
Yes.
Housing justice when?
Now.
Housing justice when?
Now.
Housing justice when?
Now.
This is about human life. I am grateful to be able to share a poem today. I'm going to make it brief, but I want you to know the words pour directly out of my heart. It is called Crying Tsunamis. We cry tsunamis. We ask ourselves if anybody hears us. When I gave birth to my son, birth to my daughter, I felt their heartbeat against my chest. I felt human life. And as they've grown, I've asked them, how do you use your heartbeats? How will you use your heartbeats? My daughter is 11, but she is quick to answer, I want to end homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
Every child deserves to have food, deserves to have a house, and to know that millions don't. We cry tsunamis. Poverty and homelessness pleads. It pleads on our streets, under bridges, inside of cardboard boxes. We are all searching for ruby slippers. How wonderful if all we had to do was click our heels 3 times.
Right.
Because certainly there is no place like home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No place like home. America, the beautiful. Be beautiful.
Yes.
Beauty means that everybody has human rights. Beauty means that we know that everyone is safe. Radical love and empathy rolls in on tides, but we must be the one to carry it forward. Justice awaits. Justice calls on us. And just as I ask my own children, I ask my students, being a teacher, I ask every single one of us, including Congress, including the Biden administration, how will you use your heartbeats? Housing justice is about human rights. And collective change requires radical love and empathy. Let us be part of the change. Let us make sure that as we cry tsunamis, we come with life floats. We come listening, hearing, seeing, feeling. And we do not forget that we are all one. Namaste.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Professor.
Thank you.
Earrings. Well, this has been a phenomenal day, a phenomenal rally and press conference. I want to thank everyone, Donald and I, NCH, and now, and all our coalition partners. I want to thank everyone for coming out today and sharing your presence and your time and your energy as we continue to apply pressure, talk about the importance and amplifying the word of why housing is important. It is a human right. It is a fundamental right. And we cannot stop now. This is not a short term. I think I saw a sign that says no more Band-Aids, right?
No more Band-Aids.
On housing. There are no more negotiations on housing.
Mm-hmm.
And as Rep. Waters said clearly, that we're willing to take our fair share of the cut, but not all the cut of housing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People are infrastructure.
Yes.
We are what makes infrastructure work and all the other systems. There are no systems without people.
Right.
So if we do not provide the basic needs that people need, then this world cannot function. We have to start honoring the inherent worth of all people.
Yes.
We all are born with inherent worth, all of us. And it's not negotiable. So we need to start giving each other what we deserve. As Rajni said, we have to start showing love. And as Donald said, we have to recognize that we have the collective power to move this motivation forward and this movement forward. So together in coalition, we will do that. Continue to put pressure, call your representatives, call everyone. And I'm going to bring Donald here to wrap us up the last words. We thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Donald.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, Madam President.
So everyone, I again want to just thank everyone who took the time, who flew in, who came here today to help us start the quest to end homelessness in America. This isn't the end. This is the first rally, but it will not be the last rally. We want to keep having rallies till we fill up this park. It is indicative that we're having a rally about homelessness and most of the press isn't here. I thank the press that is here, but it's indicative. We have not made enough noise. We have to make this an issue that people care about. And we need to start today. And I'm going to give you some homework. So before you leave today, the number 202, write that down, 202-224-3121. That is the congressional switchboard.
That's right.
So we need you to start calling today. I don't know if you heard what Maxine Waters said. We went from talking about universal vouchers to zero vouchers. Our issues have been negotiated off the table. We can't continue to allow that to happen.
No.
We can do all we want for the middle class, and I'm in the middle class myself. I want to get things for me, but I want so much more to get things for people that are homeless in this country. And so we want everybody up there to hear these words. I'm going to say, bring America home, and you're going to say now. So bring America home.
Now.
When do we want to do it?
Now.
What do we want to do?
Bring America home.
Bring America home when?
Now.
Bring America home how? Now.
Now. Housing.
We want to bring America home now. Housing is a human right.
Yes.
Housing is a human right. Housing is a human right. Before we go today, everybody on Facebook, please understand that housing is a human right. And if we're to be the country that we've always said we would be, we need to bring America home when?
Now.
Bring America home when?
Now.
Bring America home when?
Now.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Can we please give a round of applause to Donald Whitehead,
Woo.
Nunes, and now the staff of Now and NCH for organizing this great event. Thank you, everybody. Madam President.